Good Sunday, and now we're about 28 minutes from game time. And even though the DuBois versus the Washington, Booker T. Washington discussion board is not due to be finished until uh, about midnight tomorrow night, I just wanted to do a video response today so that I don't fall behind this week. And then also, you have a Twiz coming up, and this will be part of it, and I think it's important to comment on it. So far, what you have is very good. Um, there's some discussion of the veil metaphor, first of all, from W.E.B. Du Bois's piece from the Souls of Black Folks. And I liked in Linda's post where she talked about the double consciousness, because I think that's part of that veil metaphor. And to repeat, because I mentioned this in the other video response to Suis and Far, that double consciousness is that strange thing. Uh, Du Bois says peculiar sensation, where you're always sort of aware of yourself, how the dominant culture sees you. And let me be clear about that. Usually the dominant culture sees you in a less than positive light. You know, thinks less of you, thinks you're not quite as good as. Um, so maybe not as smart as, not as capable as, not as important as someone from the dominant culture. So that double consciousness is just a really interesting concept, and you can apply it to race. You can apply it to issues of gender sometimes, maybe sexual identity, um, all kinds of diversity issues. I think can be looked at through that double consciousness. And so the veil metaphor is interesting. It was like the first time that Du Bois, who was not born in this country and who uh, had experiences that were very different from the sort of really segregated racial kind of racist kind of things going on in this country, when he was a young boy, first realized, oh my God, she's rejecting my card because I'm black, and that was a shock, and that was that veil. And so even Susie said the veil is like a shield, and I guess in some ways you could look at it that way. It is that which separates clearly. It is something that separates, um, and it's always there. But because he said he didn't really work at trying to break through that veil, and he just sort of looked contemptuously through the veil at what was on the other side. Maybe he did sort of use it as sort of a defense mechanism in a way, or a shield in some way. So I thought that was good. I liked Sue's post also regarding the veil, where she looked at some biblical references where the veil's mentioned. So you really probably want to review what Susie and Linda and Sue had to say about the veil metaphor. Moving along to Washington, Booker T. Washington's distressed vessel. That's a pretty popular um, part of that speech that he gave at the Atlanta. Um, I can't think of the name. The Atlanta. It's the World's Fair. Anyway, the Atlanta Compromise is what it was called later. In reference to the speech that Washington gave. But Brett, I thought, did a really good job writing about in his thread about the distressed vessel analogy and how it worked or didn't work. Brett didn't think it was good in some ways. However, he conceded after some discussion from classmates that, I think it was Sue who actually commented on it, that it did serve a purpose, and it was a very sort of practical way of getting at his message out. And Washington had a different approach than Du Bois, that's clear. And in this particular distressed vessel analogy, it's like the African Americans or the black people are the ones on the distressed vessel who are thirsty and need help. And the friendly vessel, I suppose, is supposed to be Southern whites of all people, saying, cast down your bucket, where it is. And lo and behold, it wasn't the salty waters of the ocean. It was actually we're at the mouth of the Amazon in these sparkling clean waters. And it turns out that the distressed vessel had what it needed all along, where it was, to be successful. And this was being looked at, like the Southern blacks don't need to migrate north. I think Washington saw some of the potential problems of some of the ghettos that developed in cities where the blacks migrated, some of the problems of industrialization and the lack of opportunity maybe for black people in that particular situation. And he felt like, in the South, there was all kinds of business opportunity and economic opportunity for blacks if they would just but sort of learn to get along with and sort of be forgiving of the white Southerners, that they could be friends. You know, yeah, history bears out that there's some truth there, but there's lots of not truth there. But this, of course, would placate whites, and of course, Booker T. Washington wasn't really popular with a lot of black leaders, but his ideas, sort of got results right away. Uh, the League of Urban Development, the gosh, why can't I think? It's W.E.B. Du Bois who's with the NAACP, and it's Booker T. Washington with Tuskegee Institute, vocational education, and with the League of Urban, the Urban League, the Urban. It's in the PowerPoint. I'm sorry, I'm having trouble thinking of words this morning. But anyway, Brett's and that's an accommodationist view. An accommodationist is, okay, let's just sort of fully integrate into the dominant culture. Let's not worry about those things about us, our ethnicity, what sort of customs or traditions that we have, or identity as African Americans. Let's just, assimilate into white culture. That's the accommodationist. So you are accommodating, you take on the dominant culture's sort of identity and way of doing things. Whereas Du Bois was a separatist, not meaning like a segregationalist where we should separate out and have black communities here, or even go on back, like the colonizationists said, let's go on back to Africa. But, that we should celebrate our cultural identity and our ethnicity, and have that part part of who we are in this country. So they really had different ideas, and I thought Sue pointed it out really well in her response to Linda. And I guess we're going to just move on now finally to that third piece, where Du Bois, in a good deal of the Souls of Black Folks, has a piece where he sort of answers to Washington's ideas. And I thought Linda did a great job, and I'm not going to take a lot of time to re-explain that, but she did a great job of sort of summarizing that. And I like Sue's response, and I think it's true that Du Bois was a more intellectual, a little more philosophical, and maybe somewhat idealistic, but his point is well taken, that civil rights people shouldn't have to earn their civil rights. They should have civil rights. This is the United States. And he became so disillusioned that he eventually became communist, completely rejected capitalism, and eventually just left the country, and gave up his citizenship, and ended up living in Ghana during the last time of his life, and died there. So but no denying that his writing, his speaking, and his ideas had a great impact. Two different ways of going about it. So as you review the discussion board, I'm sure some others of you will be chiming in with some good ideas, but you have what you need right now for a good review. It's Susie and Linda for the veil. It's Brett with Sue's response for the distressed vessel. And it's Linda again for the Washington versus Du Bois kind of thing there with Sue's response. So I hope you have a great week, and that this is helpful to you as you review for TWIS 1.